push this false narrative of outside agitators coming into the student protests, which is a racist division tactic that dates back to the 1960s during the civil rights movement, when the Northerners who were coming into the South for the freedom rides were considered outside agitators.
Great video. You should go watch the whole thing. I just wanted to add a little bit to this little piece of information that she's sharing here, which is that outside agitators are actually a fear that dates back far further than the 1960s. It certainly was a major player in the civil rights movement. In fact, we have one situation in which Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested for driving with an out-of-state license, which is basically driving while black, because it was only applied to black people, but it was an attempt to make sure that people from outside the state didn't show up to join civil rights protests, sit-ins, things like that. But the actual fear of outside agitators, just it goes much further back, right? The paranoia of wanting to blame others for, upsetting the status quo. If you go all the way back to some of the major strikes in America for labor unions in 1919, you can see all of that happening as well. So I'm going to show you some headlines. So like you can see in this headline from June of 1919 in the Washington Times, police list names and quarters of radicals for roundup. We also see a headline, "We'll whip them," says Konenkamp on eve of call for strike. Radicals were never supposedly Americans. They were always supposedly communist sympathizers, Bolsheviks from outside the country who were coming in and influencing people to strike for better pay. We'll also see this in another headline. Reds in U.S. plotted revolution, deportation for all radicals. Now, you can't deport American citizens, but you can deport immigrants that you believe are there to, be anarchists or revolutionaries or radicals, and influence people to strike for better pay. And again, from 1919, police list names and quarters of radicals for roundup. So again, radicals being immigrants from Europe. There's a lot of fear of communists and Bolsheviks coming into the United States after World War I. It was a whole thing. It's the first Red Scare. And there's a lot of rhetoric used within these articles on specific strikes that show how they were really scared that these were outside agitators coming in. The Boston police strike in 1919, the strikers end up being called agents of Lenin because apparently police trying to get better pay. It's a no, you can't do that. They were real pro-cop back then, apparently. The Seattle general strike in 1919, the Chicago Tribune says it's only a middling step from Petrograd to Seattle. And then we also have the steel strike of 1919, where the steel companies put out a lot of information playing on nativist fears that a lot of the steel workers are immigrants and therefore probably communists who come in to the United States in order to overthrow capitalism. And the coal strike of 1919, strikers are actually charged by the media that Lenin and Trotsky had ordered the strike and were financing it, and that this was a Bolshevik revolution. So 1960s are not the first time that we see people extremely concerned about outside agitators. That's all I wanted to add to this.